At 18,000 feet, ancient prayer cairns stand directly beside concrete military bunkers without any explanation. Three nuclear powers converge at this altitude, and none of them fully controls what actually happens here. India, China, and Pakistan share a border zone so high that thin air itself becomes a strategic resource. The triple border zone of the high Himalayas is the most comprehensively militarized silence anywhere on this planet. No map agrees on where the lines fall. The terrain has outlasted every single treaty attempted here. Glaciers that predate every nation-state currently claiming them continue moving south at their own geological pace. The Siachen Glacier at 6,700 meters is the highest battlefield ever maintained by any military. At this altitude, the distinction between sacred ground and disputed territory depends entirely on which army arrived first.
Indian and Pakistani troops have held positions there since 1984, wonderent, longer than most current governments have existed.
The Chinese presence on the northern face watches both sides from installations that satellite imagery only partially resolves. These three militaries share no common language, no common doctrine, and no shared definition of where they stand. Yet they share the same oxygen problem. At 18,000 feet, even trained soldiers struggle to think clearly. The landscape does not distinguish between a Ladakhi nomad and a strategic planner from any of the three capitals. Both are equally irrelevant to the glacier's movement and the wind's direction at this unforgiving altitude entirely. Surveillance drones from all three sides cross invisible lines daily. Violations are documented carefully and never acted upon. The silence here is not peace, Tav. It is three incompatible claims existing in the same high-cold space. Ancient trade routes that connected Leh to Kashgar and Skardu now terminate at military checkpoints without any passage. The Silk Road's highest branches are severed here, caravans fully replaced by armored patrols on the same paths. A landscape that once connected civilizations now separates nuclear arsenals across ice fields no caravan would recognize. The bunkers are built from the same stone as the cairns because no other material survives this altitude. Corrugated iron and local slate together, the military aesthetic at this height is entirely determined by local geology. Prayer flags and signal antennas occupy the same ridgelines because both need the highest available ground to function. This is the living ghost frontier, Hunjas, inhabited by soldiers, by spirits, and by families caught between both. The families have been here longer than the borders. Their grazing routes predate every military map by centuries. They move their livestock through zones three governments claim are restricted, without knowledge or permission from anyone. The frontier does not haunt this landscape, Stunchev. It is haunted by every community it has already swallowed. We are here to document what the maps erase, and what the silence refuses to stop containing entirely. The Changthang Plateau extends northeast from Ladakh, deep into Tibet, where clouds form below the ground. Changpa nomads have grazed their Pashmina goats on this plateau for 2,000 years without documentation. A Changpa family moves their winter camp in spring, using the route their grandparents memorized in childhood. The route crosses a disputed grazing zone. Three governments claim it, and none of them graze it. The goats navigate the altitude better than any military vehicle deployed to this terrain has ever managed. A newborn kid at 14,000 feet stands within minutes. Altitude has shaped its biology across generations. The Changpa elder reads weather by her animals an hour before any instrument detects the coming change.
That knowledge is not recorded anywhere. It exists only in the continuous practice of moving through here.
Behind her camp, a fiber optic cable runs along the new military road, buried deep under the permafrost. The cable connects a forward operating base to distant headquarters, and it passes under the family's winter hearth. A drone patrol from the forward base crosses above the family's camp at exactly the same hour daily. Children no longer look up when the drone passes mate. The patrol has become a feature of the sky.
Artillery batteries are positioned on ridgelines clearly visible from the family's summer pasture 3 kilometers northwest.
The guns are pointed away from the family descent, but a barrel's angle always shifts with political temperature. The family does not discuss the guns. It would require acknowledging a permanence they have not accepted. The psychological architecture of life here requires selective vision. You see the plateau, the goats, and the sky. The bunkers at the vision's edge are processed like weather sate, unpredictable, structural, not worth engaging at all. The men maintaining those bunkers eat the same Zampa barley at altitude for entirely identical biological reasons. Both soldier and nomad carry the same altitude sickness medication, Indus. The mountain grants no medical exemptions.
The Changpa grandmother has delivered 3 generations of children at 14,000 feet without any medical infrastructure.
Ancient traditions persist not despite the military presence, but alongside it, both systems occupying different frequencies. She has watched 3 separate military buildups along the ridgeline without ever changing her established morning route. The nomad's frequency is seasonal, animal, geological, measured in pasture quality, precipitation, and the weight of fleece. The military frequency is positional, political, digital, measured in GPS coordinates, response times, and satellite coverage. They exist in the same physical space and perceive entirely different landscapes through the same cold morning air.
The psychological toll accumulates slowly, in the growing gap between what the land remembers and what borders demand.
Children raised in the shadow of fortified positions develop a specific relationship with the horizon lines at altitude. They scan the skyline instinctively, not for weather or predators, but for the new things constantly appearing there.
The road from Leh to Daulat Beg Oldi was completed in 2019, reaching 17,000 feet above sea level.
It is the highest motorable road maintained by any military force operating anywhere on this entire planet today.
The road took 17 years to complete. Permafrost rejected it repeatedly before the engineers found a reliable method.
Supply convoys now reach forward positions in hours that previously required weeks of high-altitude porter relay chains. The road changed the strategic equation. Positions once logistically untenable are now routinely staffed and fully resupplied.
Where the road crosses the ancient route, the families stop and wait for entire military convoys to pass.
It also changed the nomadic equation. The road bisects a grazing corridor the Changpa have used for centuries. The convoy carries cement, satellite equipment, and processed food for soldiers stationed above the road's upper end. Above the road, construction continues, forward posts built at altitudes where concrete requires weeks to properly cure. Workers at 18,000 feet rotate on strict schedules mense. Sustained altitude severely limits their productive working hours. A laborer pours concrete at -15 Celsius, his breath fogging the surface before the mixture can set.
Oxygen cylinders are standard equipment on construction sites here Tortumi, the same cylinders used in intensive care wards. The work continues because the strategic requirement does not pause for temperature or for oxygen saturation levels.
On the Chinese side, military villages appeared in the last 5 years on previously completely empty plateaus. These villages are built with full roads and electricity before any civilian population is encouraged to arrive. The infrastructure always precedes the people tariff, the geopolitical claim established through concrete before it is ever inhabited.
Pakistan maintains the Khunjerab Pass at 15,000 feet, connecting territory to China via the Karakoram Highway.
The highway serves as both a trade corridor and a military supply line, depending on each month's tensions. At the convergence of all 3 infrastructure systems, roads speak a language far clearer than any diplomatic statement.
Roads are claims. Bunkers are arguments. Paved passes are sentences in a legal case never reaching any court. Construction crews share altitude sickness and frostbite across these passes, regardless of which uniform they happen to wear. A Chinese and an Indian construction worker 3 ridges apart show identical vital signs on any given morning. The isolation is total. A satellite phone remains the only connection to the lower world that exists here. The world below is actively negotiating about territory the worker is physically reshaping with his hands right now. Supply helicopters cannot reach the highest construction sites in winter sites. Workers are sometimes cut off for entire weeks. The fortification of this landscape is a generational project that will outlast the specific dispute that initiated it.
The nomads who grazed here before the dispute began will be absorbed by the boundary before it concludes.
The line of actual control between India and China is not a line, it is a contested zone. Both sides patrol to the limit of their claimed territory, and neither accepts the other's position as valid. The result is daily confrontations managed through established protocols designed carefully to prevent any escalation. Soldiers face each other across glacial streams at 17,000 feet, following rules written for much lower terrain.
Banners are displayed, positions held, photographs taken for the record, and both sides formally and carefully withdraw.
This choreography has been performed thousands of times contained. It is the mechanism by which the uneasy truce holds.
Frostbite, mountain sickness, and pulmonary edema are standard occupational hazards, with no equivalent at any lower posting.
Soldiers rotate out after 90 days TACE. The mountain breaks human physiology faster than any training can compensate. All 3 militaries have different physiological protocols. The same altitude problem has 3 separately classified solutions.
Across Saltoro Ridge, Pakistan's Gyari position watches the same storm system the Indian Bana post watches daily.
They observe the same avalanche and the same temperature drop flines, and remain adversaries inside the identical storm. The migratory patterns of the last Changpa families in the contested zones are being permanently altered right now. Routes that were seasonal are now blocked pied. Families reroute, the new route is blocked, they reroute again. Each rerouting shortens the grazing range and reduces the sustainable herd size any single family can maintain. The herd size determines economic viability. Below a critical threshold, the entire pastoral life becomes impossible to sustain. When that threshold is crossed, and the young leave for Leh or Skardu, wherever the new military road reaches, the military road built to fortify the frontier becomes the exact same road the community uses to exit it. The last generation of high-altitude nomads in the triple border zone is currently alive and still moving through.
The culture survives in festivals, in textile patterns, in the Changpa dialect's vocabulary for a vanishing landscape. Vocabulary for a summer pasture now classified as a military zone will outlive the pasture in the spoken language.
3 nuclear powers reshape this landscape faster than any glacier, and the glacier has moved for 12 millennia. What remains when the last family descends is a frontier contested in total silence, without any living witnesses. The mountains will remain. The borders will shift. The silence will be exactly as loud as it always was.